Kazuo Ishiguro, the literary lion famed for stories like Never Let Me Go and The Remains of the Day, returns after a 10-year absence with the haunting and symbolically rich medieval fantasy, The Buried Giant. That's the book I'm reviewing on this episode of SFF180. Hello everybody, Thomas here once again. Thank you so much for joining me. Great to have you. The Buried Giant is a breathtakingly composed fantasy novel set in the very early medieval years in England, sometime around the 5th century, after Arthur, and yet while the country is still riven by tension between the Britons and the Saxons. Our protagonists are an elderly Briton couple, Axel and Beatrice, whose entire village is suffering a really peculiar kind of collective amnesia. Now, distressed by their situation and the feeling that everyone in their village resents them as being old and useless, Axel and Beatrice leave their village, and they undertake an odyssey that they will believe will reunite them with their son. The love and devotion depicted between the two of them is almost unimaginably sweet. I mean, it's rare enough that you get a novel that has elderly protagonists, but here you've got this little old couple where the husband still calls his wife princess. I mean, how adorable is that? The fact that something like that can exist in this book as a little character touch without being excessively cloying, I think says a lot for Ishiguro's talent. Now, along the way, they have many encounters. The countryside is infested with dangerous ogres and malicious pixies. They meet a boatman who might as well be wearing a "Hello, my name is Charon" tag on his cloak, who reveals to them something a bit distressing, which is that when he rows people across to the island in the foggy distance on the other side of the lake over there, old couples always want to travel together, but they usually have to separate because the passage of time and their fading memories has worn away at the love and devotion they have for one another. This fills Axel and Beatrice with unbearable dread, and their determination never to be separated in this way is the emotional through line of the entire novel. It's like the story's beating heart that propels their emotional journey. They are joined on their travels by a Saxon warrior named Winston, Edwin, a teenage boy whom they rescue from a terrified village where everyone's being attacked by these violent, vicious ogres, and they meet a wizened old Sir Gawain, who is many, many years away and very much a faded shadow of the man he was during his glory days as a Knight of the Round Table, and yet he is still passionately committed and loyal to his king. The landscape is blanketed by a fog that is the source of everybody's memory loss. And yet, like that fog, there is a sense of melancholy and sadness that blankets the entire story. There aren't any heroes here. There's only a sense that heroism was a concept that used to matter a long time ago, even if nobody can remember why. If Ishiguro's thematic goal here was to strip medieval romance of all of its romanticism, I gotta say, he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. Since everybody in the universe has already spoiled what the source of the fog is, I can tell you that it is the breath of a sleeping dragon named Querig, and we learn that Winston is every bit as determined to slay this beast as Sir Gawain is to protect it. And here we get the book's philosophical musings on time and memory. Is it better to forget the misdeeds of the past, or is it better to confront them head on, face them down? Axel's having flashes of memory of the man that he once was, and he is very, very nervous about how Beatrice might react if she learns about his past, or remembers his past. Beatrice also fears remembering possible youthful indiscretions that might drive Axel away. To both of them, the fear of being separated by the boatman is too much to bear. Similarly, Sir Gawain argues that the uneasy peace upon the land is only possible if no one remembers the history of terrible hostilities between the Saxons and the Britons. Without this mist of forgetfulness, what would happen? Would a new era of war begin? There is much here that is deeply moving and beautiful. Ishiguro's writing is precise and disciplined, and yet it's also haunting and hypnotic and dreamlike. More than once, he breaks the fourth wall and addresses the reader directly, and this gives us the impression that we are hearing a story, a classic legend, being passed on via oral tradition. He handles conventions of heroic fiction like sword-fighting scenes, not as action set pieces, but more like quietly contemplative moments of tragedy. And yet, The Buried Giant has this odd ability, emotionally, to both draw you in and keep you at arm's length at the same time. The story's sense of melancholy eventually feels like futility. The story basically asks, what do our lives amount to without memory? And the answer seems to be, with or without memory, in the end, not a whole lot. So maybe it's best to let sleeping dragons and buried giants lie. And that's all I've got time for on this episode of SFF180. Remember, everybody, the most important thing, these are reviews. You're not always going to agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please leave a like, share this video far and wide with your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe. That is how SFF180 grows as a channel. And until I see all of you next time, thanks so much once again, and happy reading.